We are soon to be welcoming to our stage, our virtual stage, a dear friend of mine, a colleague, a true sister. Her name is Tina Owens. Tina is the Senior Director of Food and Agriculture Impact at Danone, North America. Danone North America, for those of you who aren't familiar with that company, is the largest B corporation in the world. And B corporations, for those of you who aren't familiar, that is an organization that sets up a whole series of inquiry for a company to put itself through to really be able to see how it's performing under governance and many other key indicators of, are you really striving to make the impact in the world that your mission statement says? Are you actually achieving those goal points through a whole spectrum of a 360 view of your organization? So Tina leads change for embedding regenerative agriculture practices, farmer resiliency, regenerative financing, and industry collaboration at Danone. She has crafted a role for herself inside of this huge company to really help them deliver on the kind of systems change we need in our world today in order to do the deep healing and restoration that our world needs, both at the agricultural level and at the financing level, and at really seeing farmers have a much more equitable piece of the whole share for what creates our food system. So I just want you all to know that she is such a mover and shaker and has such deep heart and vision, and I love her so much and appreciate that she's going to speak to us. And the title of her talk is "Which Mother Do We Need Right Now?" Tina Owens, will you please join me and take this stage?
Thank you, Selene. It's so wonderful that you have brought us together over the course of these 2 days to have the conversations that matter. And I thank you for that very kind and thorough introduction. There may be a couple points in there that I restate as part of my slides, so people will get a second chance to hear some of that information. I want to talk about the talk. The talk that I'm going to give today actually started in a phone conversation that Selene and I had about 3 or 4 months ago. And it was meaningful enough to both of us that we kept kind of picking at the subject matter until she asked me to share more of it with you here today. And I think it's also helpful in these forums to understand the roles that those around us play within the regenerative food movement so that we can determine our own career path or drive for change within our existing business. So I want to talk about the intersection of regeneration, bias, and community. Have you paid attention to the skills that are most in demand at the moment? In many ways, they are the historically feminine roles of cooking, feeding, cleaning, kindness, caring, comforting, nurturing, supporting, consoling. In society, we have vastly undervalued this work, except for striking moments in history, which is where we find ourselves today, on a precipice in so many ways that we've lost count. We even have a name for these skills that are in higher demand than ever, than normal at this moment. We call them hidden work. Hidden work. Cooking, feeding, cleaning, kindness, caring, comforting, nurturing, supporting, consoling. Hidden work until now. This pandemic is creating a great reveal for us on which roles within all societies are essential. And it's funny how it boils down to the same roles everywhere. Though today, it's including most everyone in the call to take on the roles of cleaning, caring, creating comfort, and consoling. All of our systems and structures are unraveling. The seams are tearing and visible. It has become obvious that those who have been performing the hidden work all along have no safety net. We've allowed them to be invisible. Hidden work currently on display. At this time last year, could we have even imagined the world we are now in when it comes to recognizing the value of communal roles within society. But we choose whether we forget the value of that work or embed it in the way we move forward. We are at a moment when those of us who can do so consciously need to dig in to ensure that we do not spend the next several decades having our contributions in the arenas of business and agriculture, which are both the historical world of the patriarchy, go unrecognized and become a new form of hidden work. Because we still have so far to go, not only on the planet's regeneration, but to ensure we go beyond being included to being inclusive. Us, we, women, be inclusive. Reawaken the sense of community that has been our long forgotten power. How do we accomplish this? By ensuring that we are not denying the role of our feminine strength in society, the role of the community builder, the role through which all generations, regardless of species, flow, the role of the mother. I put it in these terms not because I expect that all of you are mothers, or that you even want to be mothers, or perhaps like many, you wanted motherhood and it was elusive, and I don't make light of that. Many of us, including me, have experienced those struggles firsthand. I put it in these terms because I know no matter what, you had a mother. You're here, right? Though we may come from different generations, ethnicities, and origins, there is one mother we all share, this planet we live on, and the continuing cycle of life. The life that we are all relearning through regeneration. So how do we treat our mother? Could we consciously step into the idea today, now, that how we are treating our Mother Earth and how we are treating each other are two sides of the same issue? Both systems need regeneration. And what is regeneration if not healing, caring, comforting, nurturing, supporting, consoling? When I started off working in an office 25 years ago, I noticed a peculiar pattern. So this is Tina's sake. My viewpoint, therefore, a very one-person narrow view on the past 2+ decades. So we're beginning in the mid to late 90s and the beginning of women achieving at least measurable successes that were widely celebrated and hard-earned in breaking through the glass ceiling. In fact, the term glass ceiling was coined just a few years before this in a Wall Street Journal article from 1986. And so I have a newly achieved bit of perspective, having reached my middle age, of seeing the women who came before me, paved the way, fought hard battles, and pushed their way forward. And I also have the perspective of seeing those luminescent women who come behind me and what different battles we will have to face during our shared time together in this business of regeneration. And this moment is so important that we get it right. So I'm asking you to follow me for a couple of minutes in the briefest look at these generations of women and consciously unhide a tiny sliver of the work of those who have come before us when it comes to engaging in the business of work. And today we have a much more open and nuanced view on gender and societal roles. However, we have yet to leave behind some of the frameworks that emerged in times past. Let's unpack that just a little bit today. So back to when I started working, how did those women have to show up in the late 80s and 90s to get ahead? Well, it was the shoulder pads era. Fashion follows culture. And why shoulder pads, you ask? Because we needed to look broad-shouldered, like the stereotypical gender norms of leadership at the time. Our long hair, too feminine. You cannot stand in front of the board of directors with lustrous flowing locks. No one will believe you are credible, or worse, you'll become the temptress. Cut it off, pull it back, hide it. If you really want to look the part, wear it as short as the men. Not because you want to, not because it's your choice or your power, but because that's how you had to show up. These women in my life, they walked like men with great broad strides. They talked like men, bending their conversations to use the words that would make them credible. Meanwhile, they had to downplay the fact that they had kids so they weren't viewed as weak, or else risk being put on the mommy track, another term coined in the 80s by the New York Times, only 2 years after the coining of glass ceiling. Mommy track. The 1980s, an era where we all started becoming aware of these biases and started to see the value in creating a shared language around them, naming them, unhiding them. The cost these women paid to engage in the business of work. Glass ceiling, ouch, mommy track. These women used a cookie cutter on themselves to fit in with the other cookies, who just so happened to all be men. which meant that in many cases, what was cut off was what had previously stood out as feminine. Get rid of it, hide it. Your domestic life, your motherhood, hide that work. Many of these women from this time period are now the ones retiring from the workplace. They grew up in the 60s and 70s, a time that we now refer to as the time of women's liberation, and they meant it, women's liberation, and they went to work making it happen. And we women today reap the benefits of the fights that they fought. And things progressed within the workforce. And as we learned from Dr. Stephanie Shipp yesterday, the successes that we've achieved have been uneven in their distribution across our ranks, with some groups achieving more progress than others. And for my tiny corner of the world, roughly every 4 to 5 years, the feminine aspects were slowly woven back in. And as I look back now at my women leaders, I can see the progression of feminine power coming back within their ranks. These sisters, nieces, cousins, and daughters who followed in the working mother's footsteps. Did you know that according to a study by Harvard, daughters of mothers who worked have better careers and more equal relationships in the workplace? If so, if you're a mother, then just being here now has an impact on how equitably your daughter will view herself within the workplace of the future. And if you have a son, that same study found that your working has an impact as well. Sons raised by an employed mother are more involved at home as adults, spending time caring for family members. Caring, nurturing, wait, that came out of a working mother? Caring, nurturing? Who knew? What a thought to ponder the role of working women changing the workforce through their sons. And there's some big wins we need to acknowledge, like the fact that Rwanda is the #1 country for women in politics with 64% of seats in the legislature, or that all male boards in the S&P 500 was finally banished just this past July. Less than a year ago. Less than a year ago. So fresh, and yet so last year, in this time of pandemic where everything has changed. So after a few decades of successes, we now need to talk about something that we've been hiding. We need to talk about how we treat each other as women. Because for us to truly progress at this moment in time, there are some biases we need to let go of, approaches that we've borrowed from the men that are at odds with our historical role within society, that of building community. And it's time to acknowledge the bias so that we can continue the fight for inclusiveness and equality for our particular moment in time. For all of those who struggle with us and who are certain to come behind us. As this is a conference about regeneration, I believe we will find the best answers if we look to nature, to species that help each other and what that looks like. Because the true spirit of regeneration is letting nature take lead. Did you know that elephants have matriarchal societies? Matriarchal. What does that even mean in this day and age? Is there a way we can understand that and learn from it? I found this article that talks about how being an African elephant gives new meaning to the phrase, it takes a village. The baby ends up with an entire herd of mothers, all of whom take turns watching over each other's children, including cousins, sisters, and aunts. The term for these other female elephants is Allomothers, and they help ensure the newborn survival by taking the load off its birth mother. Mother Nature, showing us that community matters. Knowing and understanding each other's work matters, and where we can lend a hand to help share the load, and it matters. I believe that such a community is possible for us, we women leading regeneration. We're not elephants, and our communities are much larger, more diverse, and forever becoming more complex. But the overall intention can be the same. How do we help share the load, building a sense of community, leading within the community, first with each other, and then in our broader lives? I'd like to invite you into a few simple yet profound questions that I think we need to ask ourselves together. And I meant for these to come up one at a time, and I apologize. For some reason that escaped me, and maybe it's because you're meant to see them all together. But I'd like to just read a few of these questions out loud, and they're not all the questions. They're meant to spark your thoughts around these questions. Are we willing to recognize and challenge the biases that determine how we interact with each other? The biases that push us to believe that men are who you go to for expertise, advice, and strategy, and women for their ability to help you understand how to execute or get things done. Are we willing to make the attempt to really see each other, to really listen to each other? Will I respect and defend your expertise and credibility and you mine? Will we choose together to abandon the cookie cutter approach that we know inflicts such pain and instead celebrate that our differences are what make us stronger? Are we willing to support each other even when it reveals our own vulnerabilities? There are many more questions we could ask of ourselves and each other. I hope that you've taken a quick picture of these questions, and if you haven't already, feel free to do so now as we wrap up. Am I a cookie cutter, cutting on others? Am I letting others use their cookie cutter on me? We fixed the superficial items. The fad of shoulder pads has long since passed. We can now wear our hair however we want. And if some of these fads come back again, it will be because we want it. We can show up in all our feminine glory and be cheered on for it, in large part thanks to the young women joining the workforce today who channel the spirit of youth and individuality into a celebration of uniqueness that I hope more will embrace. Thank you, sisters. We see you. Which mother do we want to be right now? Is there a spirit of the Allomother within each of us? Is our sense of community still enough intact that we can share this load together? This load of leading regeneration? Will the strengths that are carrying us as a nation and a world at this moment, caring, nurturing, reconnecting, get their day once all the switches are turned back on? As we continue to work on inclusiveness, let us first set the path straight here for our ability to champion each other's causes, to lift each other up, to hold the line with those who need our help, to recognize the expertise of the women around us, to expand our understanding of the role of regeneration to include community and the role of the Allomother. There's a wound that we can heal, and it is not only in the fields, but also with each other. When we're wounded, what are our instincts? Fight, heal. To fight is to have courage in the face of fear, fear of acting, fear of changing, fear that in working together we might lose control, fear of the other. And how do we combat fear? Through kindness, caring, comforting, nurturing, supporting, consoling, and listening. Hidden work. Time to unhide what is truly valuable, what has been proven essential, what we now know we cannot live without. We are the ones we have been waiting for. We are now the ones who will know what before and after an event of this magnitude looks like, and we may be helping subsequent generations to understand it, possibly for the rest of our lives. If you find yourself questioning whether or not you have the strength, the courage to fight for healing, for regeneration, then I strongly urge you to read this article by Clarissa Pinkola Estes from February of this year, when we were just at the precipice of 2020 and could already see the troubled waters ahead. Do not lose heart, friends. We were made for these times. So ladies, are you ready to roll up your sleeves? If you would like to learn more about what questions to ask yourself around the intersection of bias, community, and regeneration, there is a list that has been built by some members of my community, including my newest sister, Dr. Stephanie Shipp. I ask you to seek out one or more of these women and their voices on regeneration, bias, and community. And to those within the sound of my voice who have been my community, have lifted me up, I give you my sincere gratitude for your leadership. Selene, Robin, Paloma, and more. It means the world to support each other. Thank you.